Hey, so in this tutorial I'm just gonna show how to make the basis for these sounds in Massive. Yeah, so you get the idea. Yeah, I'm just gonna use Massive. The sounds that you just heard are slightly post-processed, but there's nothing fancy going on. And the most important part, of course, is the sound, the initial sound that you make in Massive. So I'm just gonna use a sine wave again, like I did in my last video. So, and the most important part about this sound is probably the pitch bend. So you want to use an envelope here on the oscillator and just tweak the decay settings until you're well, at the point that you like. So you're just controlling how long it takes the pitch to go down, essentially. So this sounds reasonable. We probably just, we don't care whether it's actually going down the whole octave or not. We just want to stop at any point anyway. Then I'm just gonna use phase modulation on this oscillator, and I'm gonna put the same envelope on this. And then I want to play around with the pitch of the modulation oscillator. And something that's I usually use for these sounds is not necessarily to detune waveforms. So you don't need to use two oscillators and detune them. You can just use the modulation oscillator and detune this from the sine wave here. And you will get this kind of sound. Now, of course, some filter movement needs to be added, just using a low-pass filter and an LFO. And the LFO should be controlled, or can be controlled. You can do whatever you want, but I'm just going to use the same envelope here. So everything is fitting together. And the thing about this sound is that you typically want to decrease the rate of the LFO when the sound is going down, and kind of like this. So at first, you start off with a rather high rate, and then it just goes down. This would be a bit too extreme, but you can go as far as you want, and also, of course, go as low as you want, but you need to keep in mind that usually sounds will be rather short ones, so you're probably not gonna make like a 15-second clip of this, waiting until the envelope has reached the bottom, or the pitch of the oscillator rather. So, and this really is the basic of the sound. So there's just usually make sure that if you're using a sine wave, then just make sure that it's starting on the top for this sound, which is, in my opinion, better sounding than this, but triangle uni works as well, but just depends on what kind of sound you want. If you want the filter movement to be more, well, a bit cleaner, I guess, you're just gonna use this low pass here. And then you can just make the sound really wide. And something that works really well for these type of sounds is a chorus ensemble in Massive. And yeah, it's a good alternative to the dimension expander, and of course you can use them in conjunction. So you might use a sine shaper just to add some additional harmonics or to spice the sound up a bit, but in this case it's not really needed. I think the modulation oscillator does a good job, or the phase modulation rather does a good job. Yeah, so maybe a bit sine shaper. Yeah, I'm probably not going to use this second filter here, but you could of course play around with different filters, or maybe even an additional low pass filter in parallel or in serial. Really depends on what you want. You can use the pen function here and massive to create some sort of bypass effect. You can use just the same LFO envelope rather. Of course, then if you really want this bypass effect, then you probably want to get rid of some of the stereo effects here, because it sort of diminishes the effect. Or you can just bounce this and do this later, or just do it in your DAW right away.